Great. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning for one of our panelists and attendees in Canada. My name is Elodie. I'm the event manager for Africa Mining Forum, and it is a real pleasure for me to be here with you for the second series of Africa Mining Tour hosted by the Rwanda Mine Petroleum Gas Board. Today's session will be moderated by Laura Cornish, Editor-in-Chief of Mining Review. So with my colleague from Mining Review, we've put together this series of touch points about the region in Africa, which we see as a lot of mining activities. And last month we completed East Africa, and it was a huge success. So I'm super excited about the webinar today. Our objective is to deliver timely, relevant, up-to-date information focusing on the need of the juniors, relating to investment, access to finance, capital raising across Africa, and especially after the pandemic that we are all going through, and that will probably change the mindset and business model going forward. So before I hand over to Laura, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about today's session. Firstly, today's session will be available on demand after the last session on Mining Review and Africa Mining Forum. And we can access the same link that you are using now. We also added some attachments, which are available through the Hands Out tab on the right-hand side of your screen. You can find today's deck and other related content, such as the Mining Elite Media Kit and our May edition of Mining Review Africa. Next, we'd love to hear from you during the presentation. So if you have a question for our speakers, don't be shy and feel free to send it through the Ask Staff a Question box on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll be answering as many questions as we can today. And if you don't get your question during the webinar, we'll make sure to come back to you later. And lastly, we'll encourage you to share today's webinar with your social network using the hashtag Africa Mining Forum. Before we kick off the session, let me share with you a poll. You have about 30 seconds to complete it. And if time's allowed, we'll share with you the results later today in the session. The poll should go on the screen. If you were looking at investing in West African region mining sector, which one do you feel would deliver the biggest return on investment at present? 1, Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, or other country in West Africa that holds better investment opportunity? And 5, hopefully none of you are going to tick that one, I don't think West Africa is ready for more investment yet. So we really hope that our guest today will convince you enough of the opportunities and make you consider or reconsider doing business in those territories. And to emphasize on this, I can share that 2 African mining companies are making TSX top performer list this year with projects in both Senegal and Burkina Faso. This is quite encouraging. Thank you very much. The poll should close in a second. Thank you for joining us today and participating. I would like now to kick off things by welcoming Laura. Over to you.
Thanks, Elodie, and a warm welcome from myself. I'm anticipating an exciting and interesting session today with a well-rounded and informed panel who will talk to 3 of West Africa's biggest and emerging countries in the region, Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, and Ghana. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome what I consider to be a truly global panel of speakers, including Jeff Quartermain, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director for Perseus Mining, who joins us from Perth, Australia, Rikus Grimbeek, President and Chief Executive Officer for Trevali Mining Corporation, joining us from Canada, Emma Priestley, Chief Executive Officer for Goldstone Resources, joining us from London, and Stephen Gray, Country Manager for West Africa for UK Export Finance, also joining us from London. So a big thank you to our panel for their time today, especially considering the early morning start for Rikus and evening participation from Jeff. I look forward to facilitating an interesting discussion. So to get this conversation started, I'll now hand over to our speakers to each give a brief introduction and insight into the topic. And Jeff, I'll start with yourself. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, well, thanks, Laura. Well, I guess, you know, from Perseus Mining, the company I represent, I mean, we've been in West Africa now for quite a number of years. It's, you know, people often ask us, why would we think of going there in the first place? Well, I guess the very first reason is the very rich mineral endowment that that part of the world has. We're a gold mining company, and there are some very, very big deposits there, as we well know. Lots of areas that are largely unexplored, and I think very high potential for discoveries, not only you know, ones that have already been found, but very much into the future. There's a lot of opportunity there for both experienced and junior companies. The second thing is that the foreign investment is generally very well encouraged in that part of the world. I mean, you know, it's not to say that that each country doesn't want its pound of flesh. It does, but nothing what's required is nothing out of the normal. It's no different from any other part of the world, and if anything, it's actually very reasonable, or at least we've certainly found that to be the case. The other thing, I guess, is that from our perspective, at least, and this is a really important point, is that the governance framework that exists in the countries where we operate, and I should say it's Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, is generally sound. I mean, it'd be ingenuous to say it's perfect. It's not perfect, but it is generally very sound. Both countries are robust democracies. Both countries have the separation of, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The institutions of government work reasonably well, and the other thing is that both countries have very strong traditional leadership that I think provides, moral authority to guide the people through what's going on. So in summary, I mean, we've had a very, very positive experience in West Africa ever since the company went there, and things are going extremely well today. Very happy to be a West African gold miner.
Yeah, thanks. Great intro and great sell for Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. Thanks. Rikus, I'll hand over to you. Do you want to give us some introductory insights into Burkina Faso?
Hi, Laura. Great to be part of this. So I'm not just in Canada. I'm on the west coast of Canada, in Vancouver. So it is pretty early in the morning for me. So if I look a bit tired, it's because of that. We've at Trevali, we've got 4 operations around the world. We operate in Peru, we operate in Canada, we also operate in Namibia, and then we've got our biggest operation in Burkina Faso. We are the only base metals mine in Burkina Faso. So Burkina Faso is more known for its gold deposits. We mine one of the richest zinc ore bodies in the world in Burkina Faso. Being in Burkina Faso is, if I think across the globe where we operate, it's one of the places where we've got an amazing community. We've got an amazing relationship with our community. I've been there a couple of times now, and I just love the way that we are welcomed. I've been able to meet the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Mining. I actually even met the President recently when I visited. So we are welcomed. People want us to be there, and it's also something that I'm very passionate about is sustainability in mining, and the ability for us to show that we can make a difference in the communities where we operate. I just would love going there and seeing that firsthand. When I was there the last time around, we donated a new school, so we donated some classrooms to one of the schools in our local Pacoa community, and it's just so amazing to be able to walk into a community, feel the warmth and the welcomeness, and then seeing kids being educated and given an opportunity that they wouldn't have had if it wasn't for mining. So it is amazing to be part of a community, a company, and an industry where we can tangibly see the difference that we can make. We've had, there are lots of stories about Burkina Faso. People think about the security issues. And when I talk to investors, I'd say it's one of the first questions people ask me when they hear that we've got an operation in Burkina Faso. Isn't it very unsafe? You're not worried about security? I can tell you personally, been there a couple of times, I've never felt unsafe in Burkina Faso. You have to be clever about what you do, and you have to make sure that you work with local authorities and with the government and with the community very closely. And my motto is that if your community wants you there, it doesn't matter where in the world you are, you will have a thriving operation. So, maybe I sound like I want the whole world to go to Burkina Faso, but I really do love the place, and I do love the people.
Rikus, thanks. I think you really touched on some pertinent issues that are relevant no matter where you are in Africa, and it's good to hear some positive feedback from you on how well things are going in Burkina Faso if you really engage with the communities and the government. Thanks. Emma, if I can bring you in at this point and give some introductory insights into Ghana.
Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you for inviting me. Yes, I'm Emma Priestley, and I am the Chief Executive of Goldstone Resources. I'm a lot smaller than both of Jeff's company and Rikus's company, but hopefully Goldstone will be one of the next gold producers in Ghana. Now, we are a single project company currently, but Ghana, the attraction for Ghana, for me personally, I've fortunate to have had a lot of experience working in several countries in the African continent. And I can say that Ghana is certainly one of the most attractive, and that's from the political stability of the country and the attractiveness of actually working in that country. The Ghanaians are exceedingly helpful, and certainly in the mining, as everybody knows, there's the Minerals Commission there, and really you can knock on their door and ask them for help at any stage in the development of your project. Now, Goldstone, we are very excited about it, and the shareholders that I brought in, they backed me because of our postcode. And Ghana, of course, is endowed. It's got the Ashanti Gold Belt, which I think currently I did a bit of a tot up of all the major mines, and there's certainly in excess of 200 million ounces that has certainly been discovered. We are next door to Obuasi, which is 70 million of that. They've obviously mined about 40 million of it, and I think their current resources sit at about 36 million ounces. So really, from the geology, Ghana speaks for itself. It is well endowed, and of course that makes it one of the more attractive countries within West Africa, sitting in that Birimian belt. But for us, we have a great next door neighbour, and I think I'm probably privileged that you've asked me to speak here and not Eric of Anglo, but I'm sure he would have been equally as good. But with our neighbour coming into production again, and they're scaling up to get back into full production, that is a great incentive for us being the small next door neighbour, because it obviously assists with all the infrastructure and getting all the service supplies up to assist us. So no, Ghana is a great privilege. I can say my major shareholder, Apricary, they've developed and invested in many countries in Africa. It is their first time developing one in Ghana. And I can say that they are pleasantly surprised at the ease of doing business in Ghana.
Oh, Emma, thank you so much for touching on some of those points there. And I think for any junior, if you're the neighbor to a great asset next door, you've already got some key points in your folder. So thanks so much, Emma. And last but not least, Stephen, won't you give us some insight maybe into West Africa as a region overall?
Yes, thank you, Laura, and good to be with you today. So my name is Stephen Gray, represent UK Export Finance, the UK government's export credit agency across the 15 countries in West Africa. So cover many markets, and in terms of the mining sector, we have supported transactions in the mining sector, particularly in Ghana in the past. But we're seeing an increasing demand across West Africa for supporting UK exporters to supply into the mining sector. I think when you look at the markets, one of the interesting markets that we're seeing is Ghana. You know, with the investments that they're making into the railway infrastructure in the Western region, and the aspirations around developing an alumina industry and steel and iron industry, you can see that there are the start of the building blocks to actually really create a much larger mining industry in Ghana, and moving away, increasing the activities not just on gold but into other minerals there. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks to all my panelists for some great introductory insights. It's just a start to our discussion today, so I definitely want to delve into our 3 countries in a little bit more detail. And Steve, I would like to start the conversation with you maybe, and that broader overview that you can bring to the discussion. So Steve, why do you think West Africa is considered one of the hottest investment destinations on the African continent? And maybe you want to speak to that from a regulatory and a financial standpoint.
So from a financial standpoint, the resources that are in West Africa are clearly world class, with West Africa producing the most gold out of the African continent. So you can clearly see the quality of the asset is there, attracting people like Jeff, Rickus, and Emma to invest in those countries. And therefore, yeah, they're looking for debt capital and credit enhancements, which we're able to consider those transactions. I think the pandemic this year is clearly creating further dynamics in the macros within the markets, pushing new investments into the gold sector, and they're going to go where the resource is. In terms of the regulatory environment, it's interesting to see how that's evolved over the last 10 years, to the extent that local content is becoming an increasingly important consideration in the regulatory environment. And I think that is putting pressure on the international companies, but is it really changing a direction of travel? Certainly in Ghana, you've seen local content being built into the normal business models of mining companies, but perhaps the pace has not been as quick as the regulators are looking for. And increasingly we're seeing that narrative across West Africa of not just local content in terms of supply chains, but increasingly local participation as well. And I think, as Jeff said, that the regulators are keen to ensure that they attract the right investment in the country, because this is an incredibly important part of government's revenue streams to support their social development plans in their countries.
Steve, thanks. That's some interesting points you've brought there. Jeff, you know, Perseus has established its name in Côte d'Ivoire. You've successfully built a mine already, Sisingui, and you are in the process of building a second mine in the country. So, Jeff, with that in light, why do you feel that Côte d'Ivoire is a country that's worth investing in?
Well, I mean, I guess if you're asking, you know, what enhances the value proposition, I mean, there's a number of things, I guess, about Côte d'Ivoire that has made it attractive to us. First up, the tax regime is very competitive, and quite frankly, it's very sensible as well. We actually enjoy a 5-year tax holiday. I think that that is no longer available to companies, but it has been available to attract companies initially. So that's attractive. We don't pay VAT, so that means that, you know, we don't have to worry about collecting it back from the government in the fullness of time. And the other thing is that they have like a royalty regime that has been structured in such a way that when you can afford to pay more, you do, and when the gold price is low, the take is reduced. So the tax regime is very sensible. The government guarantees fiscal stability, and that's an important thing for people like us who are investing very large amounts of money, to be able to have some certainty as to what is going to happen down the track. So that's been a really very positive thing. One of the other things I like about Côte d'Ivoire, I guess, is that the regime around which the landowners are compensated is very well defined. So, you know, we're obliged to pay 0.5% of our revenue into a local fund, and then that is administered by the local prefect. And, you know, if you go around either of our mines over there at the moment, you can see enormous amounts of development that have occurred in those areas courtesy of that funding. And so the local people know that by having us in their presence, they're actually getting something positive out of it. So that's a really a very attractive thing. I guess that from an international investor's point of view, I'd say there are quite a number of double tax treaties between Côte d'Ivoire and countries outside, which makes tax efficiency work reasonably well. It's not so much for us in Australia, because Australia doesn't have any tax treaties with African countries, unfortunately. Don't ask me why that is the case, but they don't. But certainly, you know, for Francophone or for the UK, those arrangements work exceedingly well. I guess the other thing that I would mention is that the labour market is very good on balance. There's not a lot of skilled people, in the mining industry there, but there's the workforce is very keen. They're very, you know, very enthusiastic about learning, and so we've had very, very positive experiences in terms of getting people, you know, who without mining experience and being able to train them in the way we want to do business, and that's really important as a go-forward proposition. The other thing that we've experienced is that, unlike some jurisdictions, the labour unions are not compulsory, as it were. I mean, if you treat people well, they don't feel a need to be institutionalized in that way, and we have very positive relationships with our workforce, and then that's reflected in productivity and the way we work. And I guess the final thing I would say that I find to be really positive about Côte d'Ivoire is that they make very active steps to manage the informal mining sector. Now, in a lot of countries, the informal sector is, you know, creates a lot of problems, and certainly, you know, when you're in a situation where you're constantly being you know, harassed or invaded by the informal sector, it does make life fairly difficult. In Côte d'Ivoire, they're quite proactive in terms of trying to regulate the informal. They have a number of training centres where they take people through the processes and impose on them, or at least impress on them, I should say, the importance of environmental management and OH&S and things of that nature, so that you don't have this disparate situation where sitting on your border you've got people who are creating an environmental mess or doing dangerous things to people, and we're doing different things. So look, all in all, I think that summarising that, I guess the reasonable fiscal regime is very, very important. The stability and certainty around the way the country operates are major factors in terms of making it a very investable place to go to.
Thanks, Jeff. I think maybe Côte d'Ivoire is an underrated country, and one only has to listen to some of the positive things you have to say to know that it is definitely a destination worth investing in. So thanks, Jeff. Rikus, Tavali owns the Pacoa Zinc mine in Burkina Faso. So what attracted the company to want to purchase this asset in this country?
Well, I think it's similar to what Jeff just mentioned. When you run a mining company, you invest. It's long-dated capital that you invest, so you need to have some fiscal certainty and also regulatory certainty. And I think that's what you see in Burkina Faso. We've had that. We felt comfortable to invest a lot of money in a community that needed some investment, to be honest. The other one is that it's more than just Burkina Faso. It's the whole of the West African region have got lots of talent, local talent that can work in the operations, and there's a willingness to work, and we've operated in parts in the world where it's not exactly like that. We started by having to import quite a few people to start training up the local community, but we've been there for more than 12 years now, and it's amazing that how quickly we were able to localize our workforce in Burkina Faso. The other thing is, I operated a mine in the north of Canada in a previous life. The environment can be pretty harsh in certain parts of the world, and you end up having to run basically two mines. In a place like Burkina Faso, you've got very temperate climates. It's very easy to operate from that perspective. We've also been given, a very welcoming and helping hand by the Burkina Faso government, and also, and the other part to talk about here is the help from the Canadian government. They've been very willing to support us, and whenever there's an issue for us that we need their help, they've been willing to jump on board and to come and support us with the Burkina Faso government and the broader West African community.
Thank you, Rikus. Emma, West Africa in general is known for gold. A lot of new territories in West Africa are opening up for gold, and you have touched a little bit on why Ghana is so great, but maybe you want to delve a little bit more deeply into why specifically Goldstone Resources actually did choose Ghana and maybe not look at some other areas of West Africa.
Thank you, Laura. Right, Goldstone was, shall I say, well, chosen out of a long list of projects the shareholders were looking at. When I say the shareholders, I've got a major shareholder called Apricary, which is chaired by Bill True, and he's also Goldstone Resources' chairman. Now, why Goldstone chose Ghana? I think it's got to be the other way around. It's why the major shareholder chose Goldstone. Goldstone had actually been in Ghana since 2009, and the previous management and board of directors of Goldstone were focused on exploration. Now, the world gold price, etc., markets wasn't kind to them, so look, they didn't develop it into anything further than a 600,000 ounce JORC resource. I came into Goldstone in 2016 just as a lot of these juniors change hands, and then we get a new head, and I became the chief executive. And I sat there and I thought, right, what shall I do with this company? I spoke to several people, and Bill True I was in discussion with alongside another shareholder. And Bill said, well, what do you want to do with your 600,000 ounces, Emma? And I said, well, it'd be nice to make the ounces work for themselves, because the world at that time, there was no money for exploration. And look, I'm not a geologist, did go to mining college, I'm actually a surveyor, but you know, exploration is for the geologists. And I came into this company and I was like, right, we need to drive this. I want to build a company, and I want to make Ghana as the focal point of the company. Bill sat down, we looked at it, we recognized that the deposit was in a fantastic postcode. As I've already mentioned, we are right next door to Obuasi. And what we do, everybody was focused on the 600,000 ounces that Hamasi has got to offer, which is open at depth. It's, you know, dare I say it, and there's lots of juniors in my space. We're open along strike, we're open at depth, and we know that we've just got to do the drilling in order to increase that resource. But what we are doing is raise the money, and I've got the support of shareholders who are working with the company very closely to bring that deposit into production. But the jewel in the crown for us, and this is what Ghana has still got a lot of little hidden gems, because look, Ghana's been in the gold mining industry probably alongside Côte d'Ivoire and along that whole Ashanti belt, you know, for in excess of 200 years. Now, what we have is an old mine that was actually abandoned in 1909 that most people had forgotten about, and it is called the Apricary Mine. As I've just said, it was abandoned in 1909 due to an inrush of water. Nobody has been down there since. The Apricary town has built up over the years. In fact, Apricary, I think, houses most of the miners that were working at Obuasi up until its closure a few years ago. And I have to say, I think there's an awful lot of little shafts under beds in houses in Apricary, because there's a lot of good houses in Apricary. So I think I think we're going to talk about in a minute, the illegal miners. But I think you can see where that gold has gone. So we're sat there, but for us, and this is where with Bill, we said, look, if we can reopen that mine, and there's one factor I've just missed out, I'm coming to, which is when miners were mining it for 5 years. In the 5 years of production, they went down to 500 feet. They extracted 75,000 ounces at a recovered grade of 24 grams a ton. Nobody's been down there since, and we are trying to get into those old workings. And that, to us, for Goldstone, is the jewel in the crown. Yes, Hamasi is there, and it's a good, sound, solid deposit. But when we can get back into this underground workings, that's when we'll start to make a difference. We are sandwiched between Hamasi and the Obuasi mine, and look, all the geology is indicating that we are the extension along that Ashanti belt. So, just coming back to why did Goldstone choose Ghana? It wasn't that Goldstone chose it. Goldstone was already there, but it was the shareholders that I brought in, and we agreed that we would develop it. Now, Parakali and Bill True, he can hang his hat on, well, actually, I do know, I counted it up. He can hang his hat on 29 gold mines that he's brought into production. Actually, no, correct that, 29 plants that he's put commissioned alongside gold mines all around the world. And with he and his team, we recognised that this was a very attractive project. Then when we looked at Ghana and just looked at the fiscal regime, the stability of the country, the helpfulness of the people there, it just all made for good ingredients for creating this company. So, sorry, a little bit long-winded and a little bit rounded, but I think we all know, and certainly Jeff does, he's got projects here in Ghana, and he'll know who's behind Ghana, Goldstone as well. You know, we will be the next producer in Ghana. We are making that drive.
Emma, thank you. Great answer. Long, but great answer. So I think, to have a really well-rounded discussion today, we need to talk about all the relevant trends and things that are happening currently in the countries that we're speaking about today. So with that said, Jeff, Côte d'Ivoire is due for national elections shortly. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think would be the best outcome for the country and the mining industry from those elections.
Well, look, I think without doubt, if this election delivers peace, harmony and certainty for the country, then that is far and away the best thing that both the country and the mining industry could possibly expect from it. I guess just in response to your question directly, I mean, Perseus's position is that we don't involve ourselves in politics at any level, and so I can't really, talk specifically about it, and I can't really say who I think is more likely than not to deliver that particular outcome. But if I can make a simple observation, it would be this: the very first time I visited Côte d'Ivoire was in 2011, just after the end of the last civil war that occurred after an election in 2010. And to be perfectly blunt about it, the place was an absolute mess at that particular time. Now, since then, I've been back to Côte d'Ivoire many times, and what I've witnessed is a country that is now very vibrant, bountiful, has a highly talented population, an abundance of natural resources, and importantly, it's currently held in very high esteem by many countries and people outside of the country, who have very enviously observed the growth and stability that the country's enjoyed over the last 10 years or so. And that period of time has seen a very steadily increase in the confidence not only of the population but also foreign investors. And you've seen companies like Endeavour, you've seen Rox Gold more recently, ourselves of course, who are now in the final stages of building a second mine in that period of time. So what's happened over the last 10 years is that Côte d'Ivoire has very much become a go-to kind of a destination for foreign capital. Now, to put all of this at risk, I think would be a dreadful shame, and I don't think that that would be terribly, a good outcome. I mean, I'm certainly hopeful that the participants in the election will set aside their personal agendas and will look at what's good for the country. And I think that if that does happen, then we get a government, and it doesn't really particularly matter who it is, which of the parties gets returned. But if we get a government that is acting for all of the people and for the people who have invested in that country, then everyone's going to be very well served. So we're watching the situation with great interest. I mean, the election is held on the 31st of October, so we don't have to hold our breath for too much longer. But certainly we're watching it fairly carefully, and we have high hopes that on the other side of that we'll get back to business and resume the way it's been going for the last 10 years.
Oh, absolutely, Jeff. Fingers crossed. Rikus, you did touch in your introduction a little bit on the conflicts and the issue of feeling unsafe in Burkina Faso. So, I mean, it is a hot topic. It is current in the country at the moment. Do you think it is affecting investor perception of the country?
Yeah, definitely. I think I would be lying if I say that it's not an issue. It definitely is an issue, but I think it's more than just Burkina Faso. I think there are lots of it's also wider than West Africa. It's around the world. There are lots of places where you've got lots of security concerns. The reality is that we've been working very closely with the Canadian, French governments and the Burkina Faso government, and I go back to what I said earlier. The key thing in terms of security is your relationship with your local communities. It's also the way that we at Rivati look at our sustainability and also our license to operate, is that I don't see it as a license. I see it as a privilege. It's a privilege to operate in a certain jurisdiction. I believe that it changes the way that we occur to the local communities, and also if you provide the stability, the development, and also just an openness to the local community and the local government, then you can expect to get that back. But it is an issue. I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done about what is happening there. It's a complex matter. I think we also don't get involved in any of the politics, because that's just fraught with danger. but it's important to be very close to your local communities, understand on the ground what's happening, and then work with the local governments, but also the regional government and the national governments.
Thanks, Rick, because I think, yeah, the necessity to just keep close to governments is really key to dealing with any challenges in Africa. So that just makes, a lot of sense. Emma, I think the main point that I'd like to touch on from a Ghana point of view that I know is, very topical is that energy supply is known to be a challenge in Ghana. So in light of that, how much is that, or could that be affecting investments in the country?
Thank goodness for generators. we all need them. Doesn't matter where you are. We all need them. Gosh. Actually, I got to touch something. In fact, I'm going to be calling Steve about this after this, because I've been reading this morning an article that's called "Ghana Pushes for the Adoption of Electric Vehicles to Soak Up Excess Electricity Generation Capacity." So, in theory, if I'm reading that, I don't think we've got a problem, but on the ground, we do. Just coming back to Obuasi, and look, thank goodness they are coming back into production, because when Obuasi is up and running, it means that we do have access to better infrastructure for power. We are obviously going through those motions at the moment of looking at the national grid and the supplies, and we can't cope. We suffer from, on average at the moment, probably 2 outages a day, at the site offices. So, this is putting the practical facts of the matter in, but it's all doable. We have a generator as a backup, and we're currently having some more generators that are being shipped round, ready for when we get into the development stage. So all we can do is keep talking. You can read everything, and Ghana is obviously going to be, I think, actually Steve can correct me here, I'm sure, but I think they're signing up with the World Bank in order to start to improve the infrastructure for the power. We all know that it needs a major overhaul, a major upgrade. Obviously, they've got the Volta Dam with all the hydro energy, and obviously, as that is improving and expanding, then Ghana should be in a prime position to actually have excess capacity, but it's not there yet. So it is, as I said, it's a great country, great infrastructure, very helpful, but it's just those little bits that are being slowly improved, and hopefully within the next 5 years that they'll be in a position. It'd be very nice that they might be selling power to their neighbouring countries. But yeah, in short, as I opened up, yeah, thank goodness for generators, otherwise we couldn't survive.
Absolutely, you couldn't have put it better, Emma. Steve, would you like to comment on what Emma said, and perhaps add to that if you see that there are any other major challenges with regards to investments in West Africa?
So responding to Emma's specific point about energy in Ghana, at the moment, Ghana has contracted more generating capacity than they have demand for. The problem is actually more with the distribution and transmission network in getting to the places where it's required. And often that's quite an expensive ask of the government to do. But the Ghana Infrastructure Plan 2018 to 2047 sort of sets out the aspirations of the country in terms of its footprint for power generation. And one thing that is part of that is the energy transition to renewable energy. And we're increasingly seeing British companies providing power as a service that are combining not just diesel generators, but actually solar solutions to mining companies in some of these remote locations. So there are commercial opportunities out there, and particularly that mines are there for the long term. The investment into the renewable energy sector could certainly be something that's could be taken up more by mining companies. But in terms of investment challenges, I think we've heard of some of them alluded to with the other speakers. One is the lack of infrastructure available to get resources to and from the mining sites. And certainly, again, you're seeing some countries that are now coming up with a clear narrative around the infrastructure that they're putting in place to help unlock the natural wealth in the grounds. Ghana, as we're seeing with the railway investments in the Western region, with their plans in the energy sector. Certainly that's going to help reduce the cost of mining companies to get to those assets in various locations. The other part is in terms of finance and through looking at through the lenses UK Export Finance. A lot of companies tend to be capped on their credit rating based on the country credit rating, and they often find it quite difficult to pierce the sovereign ceiling. And so that comes with an additional cost on finance around the markets that they're looking into. And I think that's where perhaps more work needs to be done in financial engineering, so that mining companies can pierce the sovereign ceiling for their project finance deals in that space. Regulatory environments, they can always be better, but I think, as Jeff has said in his speech, they're acceptable. People are investing, but it can always be work in progress to improve the investments. The other part, of course, is the challenge of investments is the dual economies of the real economy and the political economy. And the political economy works on a much shorter timeline than the real economy. And if you're unable to deliver an investment within the sort of 4-year cycle of elections, politicians can get impatient and move on. And I think that's an area that's often results in frustration on investments, and ensuring that you not only have the social partnership in place with local communities, but you also have the buy-in of stakeholders across the political spectrums to ensure that there's continuity and consistency of support for your project.
Stephen, again, such pertinent issues to the discussion. Thank you for that insight. Rikus, it's really refreshing to have a panelist talking about West Africa that's in a metal other than gold. So don't you want to share the potential for base metals and zinc, obviously in particular? Why do you think zinc is such an attractive metal at the moment? And I want to add to that, one of our audience members has asked about your interest in manganese in the country. So if you want to give some insights into that audience question as well, it would be great.
Yep, thanks, Laura. I must be honest, 4 or 5 months ago, I didn't like zinc that much when it was at 83 cents a pound. It made life quite difficult, and I wish I was in gold. But that's life. It's the industry we're in. When I look at zinc, it's got a lot of industrial use, so a lot of galvanizing. Most of it goes into galvanizing of steel. There's also the agricultural use of zinc, and also the health side. I'm pretty sure as I was at a conference just when COVID started, and I couldn't understand why the zinc price was going down, because people should be drinking their zinc supplements, to make sure that the immunity system stays strong. So, but zinc is linked to iron ore or to steel making, and we are very confident that the zinc price will it's recovered quite substantially since March. It's gone up nearly 25%, and it's underpinned by demand in China, and there's a lot of infrastructure that is and will be built over the next decade around the world. The decarbonizing of industries across the world is going to result in a lot of new builds. So even if you just think of something like electric vehicles, everyone gets all excited about electric vehicles and nickel and other battery metals. Zinc is also a battery metal. It's used in batteries, and if you think that over the next 10 to 15 years, most of what we drive today will not be there anymore in terms of cars. Those things have to be rebuilt, and zinc is used in galvanizing for building of vehicles as well. So a lot of uses. It's not a very well understood metal around the world. It's quite a small market, and that's also why we've seen every single time there's a big supply disruption on the zinc, in zinc, that there's a disproportionate reaction in price. We saw that in 2008, we saw that in 2016, and this year we've seen between 25 to 35% of the world supply of zinc got disrupted during COVID, and therefore I think it's why you're seeing the big disproportionate reaction in price at the moment. So, you know, we love zinc from that perspective. Burkina Faso is totally underexplored for base metals. You know, the region we are in, that belt is, as we mine 14% zinc. I spoke to the team yesterday. We actually now mining stopes where we've got 21% zinc. You know, you basically don't even have to put it through a processing plant. You can just galvanize using it coming from underground. So it's an amazingly rich region. You know, VMS systems, we know always they come in regions, in belts, and it's not just one. There'll be plenty others, and we've got a number of regional targets that we want to start drilling in the near future to see if we can replicate the current Pacoa ore body that we found. We've recently drilled into what we call T3. It's another ore body deeper in the current mining operation. So there's lots of potential there. You asked me about manganese. You know, I was also in a previous life ran some manganese mines and also manganese smelters. It's a very similar to zinc. It's a rather small base metal market. But you know, there are some real benefits if you can find the right ore body. I know that in Burkina Faso there's a very interesting high grade, low phos manganese ore body or manganese ore region that can in my view will be developed over the next 10 years. The two things that I would say really is holding it back at the moment is infrastructure. So when you mine manganese, you need a bulk handling capacity, so you need railway lines. And you know, that's when you look at where this ore body sits and where the ports are, there's actually a railway line that just needs to be upgraded. So I can't wait for that to happen, and we will definitely jump on board to make that happen, because that railway line comes straight past our Pacoa operation, and it will definitely help us, you know, transport our concentrate to port a lot more efficiently than in what we currently do by trucking it. So yeah, I think manganese, it's more than manganese and zinc. I think there's a whole base metals potential in West Africa that is not that's not really been explored, mainly because you know, gold is such a hot topic at the moment.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, like I said, just so refreshing to talk about other metals in addition to gold that West Africa is lucrative for. So thank you for some of that insight. Jeff, an interesting question from the audience, and I know you have some insights into this, so I'm going to address this one to you. How do you handle purchasing of equipment for your mines locally, or do you import them and deal directly with OEMs? Jeff, you're on mute, I think.
Sorry, my apologies. Yep, I'm getting used to this. Yeah, no, it's an interesting question, this one. I mean, it is a pretty hot topic in West Africa, as I think someone mentioned earlier on. You know, one of the things that all of the governments are very keen to do is to maximise the amount of local procurement that you can actually achieve. Now, we certainly work extremely actively at doing that in terms of using local contractors and the like. But there is a lot of equipment though that just simply is not manufactured in country, or you know, there isn't the level of sophistication in the manufacturing processes. And so under that scenario, we do have to import it. And you know, you pay import duties and all the rest of it when you do that, and we deal directly with the OEMs in doing that. But having said that, there is an awful lot of inputs to your business that you can procure locally, and particularly well in Ghana in particular, where we have one of our operating mines. Sorry, Emma, I'm stealing your thunder here, but in Ghana, where we have one of our mines, I mean, just about every one of our contractors on the site is a Ghanaian company, and they do an exceptionally good job at delivering all of the services. One of the things that some of the governments have tried to do is to push very hard at local procurement, but what they've succeeded in doing is establishing an entrepreneurial class of people who simply sit between you and the OEM and add on to the price of the goods and services. And to be frank, while that does enrich those people, I don't think it really does what the government is wanting to do, and that is to develop capacity within the country. But I think it is a responsibility of all of the companies to procure locally to the extent that you can, but be realistic about it. There are some things you just simply cannot get locally, and under that scenario, you do need to go outside.
Thanks, Jeff. I think an absolutely critical question to answer for our audience today. So thanks for some insight into that. Emma, a really interesting question from my perspective from the audience. Has the updated ICMM guidelines affected the potential for investment in Ghana, considering the already strict EPA and MINCOM regulations related to tailing storage facilities?
Simple answer, it doesn't affect us yet. Look, when we get into production, we are heap leach, so we don't have tailings. So we've circumvented that one for now. But obviously, as we develop the Hamasi project, then as we move out of the oxides into the primary ore, then yes, we will have the tailings to tackle. Look, it is something that we're reading up on, the strict regulation, but look, it's doable. And what I can say there, we've got, and as Jeff says, look, we've got great expertise within Ghana. We are working closely with Professor Amankwa at Pacoa, who's very good on all of those related matters. And again, as Jeff has pointed out, there is a lot of expertise in Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, in all of those countries. And you do have to bring experts in for certain things, but you can't beat going with the local expertise. So yeah, in short, it doesn't affect us yet, but it is something that we're reading up on. And look, the rules are there. So we shouldn't make the mistakes, because we will be guided by those strict guidelines, and then we won't have hopefully don't have the mistakes.
Brilliant, Emma, thanks. Steve, a nice question coming through from the audience for yourself. Direct lending, they're saying, through the UK export finance is incredibly beneficial. Given how low these rates are in comparison with other forms of financing, are you confident that the UK export finance has sufficient availability for direct lending? Steve, you're on mute.
Sorry. Interesting question. Perhaps for the benefit of those on the call that may not be aware of ECA support, let me just run through a few key pertinent points and then go to the question. So as UK Export Finance, we're established to support the exports of capital, goods and services to overseas markets by providing financing or insuring products to support the exports of those viable export contracts. And we also provide political and commercial risk insurance. We have a number of preconditions that need to be satisfied in order to mobilize UK Export Finance support, like most ECAs, and those are normally captured in the OECD Common Consensus Agreements, which have various restrictions in terms of the minimum premium that we can charge for the credit risk insurance we provide. There's also restrictions around local costs, down payments and the repayment structure. And the eligibility requirements for UK Export Finance are such that we can look at a transaction if there is a minimum of 20% UK goods, services or intangible products within that. But there are also environmental and social impact issues to be considered as part of the due diligence. And we work to the World Bank performance standards. The underlying thing to remember about ECAs is that their guarantees are intended to ensure that a bankable transaction, an already bankable transaction, is made more attractive with the support of the guarantee by elevating the credit rating of the transaction to that of the nation that is supporting the loan through credit insurance, and so that really can deliver meaningful and lower costs, because those lending, the commercial banks lending, now have a risk that is the UK government credit risk as opposed to the project risks. The other benefits, of course, are that there can be extended repayment periods, and for project finance that can be up to 4 years moratorium plus 14 years repayments, it allows you to access alternative funding sources that may not be open without that sort of cover. Now, the thing about ECAs is that they're intended to complement, not compete with the private sector. And so with the direct lending products that we have, we mobilize those into projects where the export contract may fail without the really attractive and much lower interest rates, as the person who's asked the question has indicated, that it offers a SIR rate which is lower than the LIBOR rate, and it is a fixed rate for the duration of the loan. Now, no matter how much money you have, liquidity you have to provide that direct lending as an ECA, the market is always going to want to take that because it's so attractive. So regardless of how much UK Export Finance has, in the eyes of the market, it's never going to be enough. But yeah, from the amounts that the UK government is willing to lend or provide direct lending liquidity is a function for HMT, and that gets announced through the annual budgeting process. And just recently this year, the direct lending capacity was increased by another £2 billion in order to support the green growth projects as part of the UK government's commitments towards the zero carbon by 2050. Back to you.
Thanks, Stephen, for that thorough answer. I'm sure our audience member will be much appreciative of that. Rikus, a very good question coming through from the audience, and I think one that's really relevant to West Africa as a whole, but this one obviously pertains to Burkina Faso. And our audience member is asking, how serious is the language barrier in Burkina Faso? In other words, can you survive in the country if you don't speak French?
Well, a lot of people would say that I can't even speak English. So, it's one of those things. We've been there for a number of years. The beauty of being a Canadian company is that, we do have a lot of French-speaking people that's part of our company. And we also operate in Peru, where we've got Spanish as a language. The one thing I can say about Burkina Faso, I've worked in countries, I'm not going to name them because I'll get in trouble, where the culture is exclusive. So you would very easily get excluded in a conversation because you don't speak the local language. I do not find that at all in Burkina Faso. The people are very inclusive, and people actually do speak. A lot of people speak English, so you can get along by speaking English and survive. But again, I go back to if you want to really assimilate and be part of their local community, then you take on learning the local language, and it's more than just French. There are also local dialects and also local languages, more indigenous languages that you need to be able to speak. It also makes a huge difference when you can employ local people, and that's been core to our successes, that we've pushed to get as many local people to work for us at all levels in the organization. So therefore it doesn't become an issue. And also, life's become very different over the last couple of years. Google Translate makes a huge difference. At least you can use that to get by if you're really in trouble. And I think it's going to become less and less of an issue all around the world.
Rikus, I think good answer on that one, and good for us non-French speaking people that are investing in the West African mining region there. So I'm going to take just a very, very short little break to reveal the results of our poll that we took in the beginning. And then I'm going to ask each of our panelists to give a quick 1 minute or 30-second opinion on the results. So our poll was asking which West African country will deliver the biggest return on investment in the mining sector. At 11% voting Burkina Faso, 22% voting Cote d'Ivoire, and 56% voting Ghana, with a very small number of percentage saying other countries in West Africa. So Ghana the leader, followed by Cote d'Ivoire, followed by Burkina Faso. So with those results, Jeff, let me hand over to you. And don't you want to give me your thoughts on that poll?
Yeah, in very short terms, I don't agree with the answer, but you know, that's another thing. No, I mean, given that we operate in both Ghana and in Cote d'Ivoire, I think we, you know, in a very good position to make an assessment between the two. You know, both countries are good. Ghana's not that easy though. It has been a leading place for a very long time, but it you know, it has its challenges along with everybody else. And I do think that Cote d'Ivoire in recent times has certainly pegged it back a lot further than what that poll would indicate.
Thanks, Jeff. Emma, good news on the Ghana front from your side?
I've got no complaints, Jeff. It's been like the Eurovision Song Contest, isn't it? It's like, anyway, look, Ghana's, look, let's face it, I mean, even Ghana had got its troubles and woes, even, you know, as short as, you know, 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago. So it's done well to actually, you know, transform the country. I think people recognize that the stability, there was a very peaceful election, and obviously it was a major change in parties. We've got another election coming. But Ghana's proved that it has very peaceful elections and very, you know, it's matured. So yeah, I think it's got a lot going for it.
Brilliant, Emma. Rickus, surprised by the results? Not, have we lost Rickus?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I'm just, my connection is slow. Must be cold outside. No,
no problem, Rickus.
No, I'm not surprised at all. You know, I think it's more of a vote for gold. You know, I think a lot of people, and also security issues. I think there's you know, around the world, people think of Burkina Faso, they think of you know, some of the horrific attacks that have happened over the last couple of years. So there's a lot of nervousness around that. You know, we are there, so I've got a different view. I know that it's a country with issues, but it's also a country with huge potential.
Rickus, hopefully through the course of this session today, we've convinced some people to change their minds. That would be our real objective. Steve, your opinion on those poll results?
So I think it reflects the perception of the attractiveness of the Ghanaian markets. I agree with Jeff. Ghana, if you go to Ghana, you'll never have a bad meeting, but converting a good meeting into action is where the challenges and the frictions take place. But in terms of, is Ghana the best place to get the best return on investment? I always have taken the view that in the markets where there are higher risks, there are higher returns if you have the skills to manage those risks. I think that's what's reflected in Jeff's and Rickus's comments to that poll.
Brilliant, Steve, thanks. I think we've got sort of roughly 10 or 12 minutes left, so I am also going to ask each of my panelists to give sort of very brief overview of how COVID-19 has affected your operation, and alongside that, a short operational update as well. So Jeff, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, well, I mean, COVID hasn't really had too big an impact at all, actually, to be perfectly frank. I mean, we acted very quickly. We put in place a lot of protocols, and to date, we haven't had any infections of any note, you know, on the operations. I think we had 1 or 2 cases at our Yaouré development, but that was quickly contained. So COVID hasn't been a big deal for us. I mean, the biggest issue was for expatriates being able to travel in and out, and that has been a bit of a challenge. But aside from that, we've hardly missed a beat actually along the way. And you know, one of the things I am particularly proud of, we've built a you know, a fairly large mine in Yaouré. We're about 85% of the way through now. We'll be pouring first gold at the end of this year. And we've done that with the COVID backdrop, and I think that's a very major achievement that our guys can be super proud of. So, you know, we've operated pretty well under those circumstances. Our 2 operations are going exceptionally well also. I mean, we are really in a sweet space at the moment. I guess we very deliberately developed our projects with the view of selling gold into a rising market, and our timing has been pretty darn good as far as that's concerned. So both Sissingué and Edikan are producing at the very best levels for a very long time, and being able to sell gold at current prices means that we are generating a lot of cash. So our company has never been in better shape, to put it in a very succinct manner, and long may that continue.
Jeff, I think no one would dispute the phenomenal success that you have injected into Perseus Mining over the recent years. I mean, you're about to bring your third mine into operation in a phenomenal space of time. So such excellent news to see that you're still tracking well with Yaouré in spite of COVID-19. Emma, COVID-19 on your operation or on your developments in Ghana, how have you been impacted?
Pretty much the same as Jeff. Been very fortunate that, look, Ghana was, I think, quite effective. They closed the borders quickly, a little bit too quickly, because I could have done with getting a couple of people out there before lockdown. But we managed to keep things going. We're pushing through, permitting, everything else. We've actually kept pretty much on track. So we have strived. Look, we're not in operation yet, but I do know from all the operators in country that I think all the mining companies have managed very well. I think probably all companies have got their expatriates to thank, who actually, should we say, got stuck in country, and they've all stayed in country to keep operations running. That's not just for Goldstone. That's I'm sure Jeff found the same with his guys that were stuck on the mines, both in Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. But as I say, it didn't impact us greatly. There's plenty of other businesses elsewhere in the world where COVID's had a major impact, and I think we in the mining industry have probably managed it well. We've put protocols in place, as many companies have, because we have to deal with lots of pandemics. We've already had Ebola out in West Africa, so we were pretty set up actually, and I think we've all been quite mature about managing the situation.
Okay, cheers to mining and its ability to always be resilient and handle things so well, Emma. I mean, I just think mining is so good in that area. Rikus, a bit of a long question for you. If you could just give us an operational update mentioning COVID-19, and I want to bring something else in for you to respond to at this point. And Trevali has been awarded a spot with the Great Canadian Innovators Yearbook for using artificial intelligence and business intelligence to run remote sites efficiently. So I think some comments around how critical digital transformation is for junior mining projects in West Africa, and what needs to be done to implement them. And it actually does touch on an audience question asking if mines in the area are looking at automating or bringing automation into their mines. So a lot around that specific topic. So your insights into that would be great, Rikus.
There's a lot in that question. A couple of questions. I'll start with COVID, because I think one thing that the mining industry is actually not recognized for is the amazing job that we've done to keep things going. It's been super tough for us, to be honest. We had to deal with not just the pandemic and getting people into remote working places, but we operate in Peru. Peru as a country has been terribly impacted by COVID. Some really interesting stats as to why that would be. Some countries, I suppose there'll be many books written after this pandemic about what's caused what and where and why certain places got impacted more than others. But something as simple as a community where people, only 25% of the people have fridges at home, means that people have to go to markets every day to go and get food, and where more than 90% of the traders in the market is positive, that impacts the whole country and the region. So we really struggled in Peru, but we were able to keep our Santander operation going for most of the time. In West Africa, we were at Pacoa, we were not impacted nearly as badly, and the operation's running really well. It's actually running at record production levels at the moment. And in Namibia, we had similar, it was more challenging because of what happened in South Africa, where a lot of the borders got closed and some of our supply lines got impacted, but we were able to keep it going and keep operating. And I think that in itself just shows, great, good management, but also the fact that our industry, we always find a way to get things done. And I'd say the other part that made a huge difference in Pacoa is that we had to do a lot of local education as to what the pandemic's all about. So we spent quite a bit of time teaching and coaching our local communities, making sure that they had the right PPE to deal with what they needed to deal with, to make sure that they stay healthy and safe through this period. But all our operations are running flat out, and we are doing really well at the moment. In terms of the question around digitalization, we got awarded by the award was given to us by Microsoft, and I'm very grateful for that and for the recognition that we've been given as a company, because it's what we're building as a platform to operate mines in more remotely, but also using digital technology to run businesses much more efficiently. I think if you today are building a mine and you're not thinking of digital, then you're making a big mistake. The world is shifting dramatically. We know that we have to be able to guarantee people's safety. There's such a big difference between making safety a priority and also and guaranteeing people's safety. I think our industry, we still have a long way to go in terms of safety. And using data, using digital, using latest technology, automation is all part of creating a mining industry where we will be able to do that, and also where we will be able to use less of the resources like water and electricity to produce more. We have to start using digital technology and data much more efficiently. What we are building is an operating platform where you can bolt operations onto that. So we use data, we operate remotely, we design remotely, and we just focus on running something with more precision. That's what we do as an organization, and I think as an industry you'll see that happen more and more around the world. Automation is already happening in West Africa. A lot of mines. For example, I know there's a gold company that I saw them at one of the trade shows, showing off how they were operating a mine from London in West Africa. So it's nothing new. We are doing it. Again, I go back to my own response around COVID. The mining industry have been using autonomous vehicles and remote operated vehicles for years, and a lot of people are now talking about maybe we should be moving to autonomous vehicles in cities, and the industry been using that for years. So it's more complex in cities, but it's something that I think you'll see a lot more focus on in coming years. And I think when you look at boards of mining companies, you'll see a lot more technology people coming into that, because it is something that, my view, mining industry will have to really embrace very quickly, and is doing so. But I think the pace will pick up over the next couple of years.
Thanks, Rikus, and it's good to see juniors doing these things and leading the way for others to follow. So with just a minute, Steve, can I ask you to close out the session before I hand back over to Elodie? In just a few seconds, what do you think mining companies can do to better attract investment into their projects in West Africa?
So I'll answer that through the lens of ECAs. So how can mining companies access ECA supports, and particularly important in this sort of post-pandemic environment that we're living in, or we'll be moving into, and that is to come to us with a clear articulation of the bankability, the financial structuring of the transaction, the clarity of where the supply chain is coming from the UK, and the robustness of the offtake agreements, because at the end of the day, to access debt finance which is credit enhanced, we need to see the credit worthiness of the transaction. So come to us with a properly structured transaction that addresses the risks and articulates how they're managed, and we will be able to look at that.
Brilliant. Thanks, and thanks to my whole panel for such great insights today. I'm going to just hand back over to Elodie, and she will close out our session today.
Thank you, Laura, for that. Thank you very much, everyone. So really, on behalf of Africa Mining Forum and Mining of Africa, thank you so much for the panel today to be present with us, and especially Rikus for the early start of the day. I also would like to thank our moderator, Laura, for this exceptional session. And I think what I will reinforce here is the current stability in the political regime that you have been highlighting and all the untapped potential of strategic resources. I think it's what brought you here today, to be committed to those territories. And I think it's a really positive message to communicate. I would like to remind you all that a recording of today's webinar will be available on demand on the miningreview.com and Africa Mining Forum websites. And the tour continues, guys, as our travel bug never stops. Our next stop will be in Southern Africa on the 20th of October. We'll be guiding you to invest in Southern African mining post-pandemic. You can already register. And as we like to keep you busy and tuned, we have also launched our digital event that will take place from the 16th to the 20th of November. Check out the agenda on our website, africaminingforum.com, and register really soon. But most importantly, stay safe, keep well, and thank you so much for the support again. We can only hope that we can continue showing ours. Thank you for joining and see you soon.